Hello, everyone. Welcome to Courageous Custody, your weekly dose of empowerment and practical guidance. I am Renee Rodriguez, creator of the Custody Blueprint, divorce mediator, and parenting coordinator.
And I'm Atra Tarfa, a level 3 trained internal family systems practitioner and co-founder of the Global Trauma Institute. And we understand there are unique challenges that protective parents face in the courtroom. And our mission every week is to equip you with strategic thinking and the emotional support that you need to navigate this journey with strength and resilience.
So every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to go live on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, bringing you inspiration and insight from stories about courageous parents who walked in your shoes and emerged victorious in big ways and small, and practical strategies from us to help you advocate for your children and manage your trauma as you go through your custody case. So let's dive in.
Let's dive in.
We are not giving legal advice or therapy.
Yeah, and if you're feeling triggered, we want you to take care of yourself, leave, and join us maybe in the comments.
So today's topic is weaponized neglect, when a co-parent uses hands-off parenting to harm your child. This is such a hard topic, and I think it feels like it's almost rare that we are working with a protective parent who hasn't experienced this. I think it's a particularly insidious form of abuse, right? It's not necessarily that there's physical abuse or anything like that, but it's essential, I think, how to recognize it, understand how to recognize it, and address it in court. So let's start with the challenging aspect. How do we prove neglect without direct harm evidence? And I think it's so important for me to say, I know the people we work with hear it all the time, but it's very important for me to say that neglect has a very, very, very high bar in family court. There are a lot of instances of things that, and today might be a little bit triggering. And so we recognize that, but where a parent has come to understand that their child has almost drowned, that their child was skating on thin ice and fell in, that a child fell off of an ATV. And we're talking about small, children. But the problem is that if it only happened that one time, it was an accident, right? And so when our protective parents lived with somebody who was neglectful, who couldn't be bothered with the children, then it's very clear as to what's going on, right? But neglect, especially this hands-off variety, it often doesn't leave visible marks. It's about a pattern of failing to meet a child's basic needs, including safety. But to prove this, you need to focus on demonstrating a consistent pattern of inaction, not being there when the child is at the pool, allowing the child to do this, not giving them lunch, not packing them lunch, this can involve documenting instances where the other parent failed to provide adequate supervision or medical care or emotional support. All of these things you want to have there. And one of the most effective ways to do this is by gathering evidence from, various sources. Photos of the child's living conditions, if you can, what the child shares in conversations. It becomes hearsay, but, I think I'm always saying that you want to gather that. School reports are something that I especially like for protective parents to go to. Emails from teachers can be very, very helpful. And you don't want to be obvious about asking them to do anything, to spy or anything like that. It's just that when you receive those are great. When there's lack of hygiene, everyone has come to know when I talk about take a picture of your child when they come home, but when you're taking a picture of your children, coming home dirty or wearing the same clothing that they left in, or that type of thing, that we don't put the children in the middle. So it very much needs to be, I want to take this picture for a different reason, but it has to be a truthful reason. Things like, grandma's missed you. She really wants to see you. Take the picture and send it to grandma. Let grandma, see your kiddo, but you're documenting basically the state that this child has come home in. School reports are amazing because they can reveal issues with attendance, with academic performance, with social behavior. And so any of those emails that I talked about are going to be critical. Now, we know that this kind of hands-off neglect has serious psychological impacts on children. I mean, Atra, given your expertise in trauma, can you speak to what some of those impacts might be?
Oh, absolutely. We tend to see really, really high levels of feeling a lack of self-worth, of like self-esteem issues, especially in younger children that are already struggling with where do they fit in the world amongst their peers. And so when there is neglect at home, there's this sort of sense of, I don't matter, right? Nobody cares. And these messages that then start to develop in what's considered an area of the brain called the default mode network. And the default mode network is actually more active when you're at rest. So oftentimes people and kids, especially, they don't even know that they're doing this, but will stay busy, right? I have to always keep my brain engaged because when it's quiet and it's silent, then all the thoughts about how much I don't matter can come up. And then there's, that, and then that can lead to anxiety, depression, all of these other things that we start to begin to see as far as mental health injuries and disorders that occur. But then there's also sort of the flip side of that psychological abuse, because that's what it is. There's maybe an over reliance on being self independent, right? I don't need anything. The child that learns to just be completely self reliant. If it's to be, it's up to me. It's only can do things my way or get it done this way. And so there's literally sort of no aspect of community and the connectedness that we as human beings at our core are wired for connection. And so that begins to get impaired and severely impacted when there are evidence of neglect, passive and active. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to understand those psychological impacts, but it's also important to make sure the courts understand them as well. Right. It's all
yes.
very well and good for us to talk about it, but let's discuss sort of, court, pathways for intervention. There are, options available, right? Parents should file a motion for modification of custody. And while that may feel like a duh sort of statement, it's actually surprising and understandable how many parents don't understand that, once something is signed, whether it's an order that was stamped or whether it's an agreement that was signed, that, that's it, that's the end of it. But in reality, you can file a motion for the modification. And one of the things you have to do is go to your jurisdiction and see, once there's some sort of a final agreement or order, when are you allowed to modify? In some jurisdictions, it's 6 months later. In some jurisdictions, it's a couple of years later, which is usually about where it lands, right? You might be looking then in doing this, because the question becomes, well, what am I filing a motion for? Because it's a lot of times people say, well, we're going to file sanctions, that type of thing. But it's really about limiting or restricting the other parent's parenting time. And I think it's always helpful to say these are things we'd suggest that the other parent do to become a better parent. You can also file a report with CPS, but this is something, that I think, we've talked a little bit about this, and, we continue to talk about the fact that, unfortunately, when a parent calls CPS about the other parent and there's been any sort of custody issues or currently in a custody battle, it tends to not be taken as seriously by many CPS. I mean, I've heard them talk about the fact that it's just about the custody battle. It's just about getting more custody. And so it becomes confusing for CPS. It becomes something that on the other side means can CPS help? Will CPS be able to help if they think that this is being done maliciously? And so I like to say that if your child is trusting their therapist, therapists are usually mandated reporters who will call and get some help for that, right? Or the school or something where they're noticing that the child is always underslept, always underfed when they see them. But hopefully CPS would get involved and see what it is they really need to see. To the extreme, I've seen, we've had a couple of protective parents just this year who have been able to get restraining orders or protective orders, depending on the jurisdiction, to ensure the child's safety. But I think I have to say here, the most important thing is you want to look in your jurisdiction, you want to talk to your attorney about what can we do? And remember, I'm always going to say, do not ask your attorney yes, no questions. Can we do this? Always ask them, how can we do this? What can we do about this? So that you can, get them thinking outside of the usual, well, people don't normally do anything about it. It's kind of like, well, we want something done in this case. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Weaponized neglect isn't just about absence, right? It is literally an intentional strategy of the abusive parent. And particularly the neglect can be used strategically to alienate the child from the protective parent and to create that legal chaos that they thrive off of, especially within a system that can favor that. One of the things that I really want to mention too is a parent, particularly with narcissistic or abusive tendencies, they may use this neglect as a power move.
Mm-hmm.
And that can force the child to become, like I said earlier, self-sufficient, emotional detached from both parents. A primary caregiver parent who is very connected to their child may all of a sudden start to see the child naturally just starts to react in a detached sort of way, and not just from that parent, but from both, because there's this freeze response that can often occur. And so when neglect is used as a form of control, oftentimes a child doesn't know at that such a young age, their brain is still developing how to deal with what's going on in front of them. And so the courts fail to recognize this because it doesn't look like outright harm. It just to the courts looks like a different parenting style. And that's often not the case. And that can also lead to parental blame, more like parental blame reversal, where the more responsible parent is being accused of being controlling, while actually the neglectful parent may be seen as, oh, they're easygoing, they're more flexible, when in actuality, they're being quite neglectful. Yeah. Well, I think that's about all we have for today, Renee.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Any final thoughts from you?
No, it's such a hard topic, and it really does come down to having the evidence as usual. Isn't that usually what it is? Documenting everything and being sure that you present it in the right way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Before we go,
absolutely.
thank you so much for joining us, whether live or on replay. We're so grateful to have helped in any way we may have. We have some great takeaways for this week. Focus on proving patterns of neglect and not just those isolated incidents that'll be called freak accidents. Utilize diverse evidence sources like photos, like school reports, and the children's own words, and understand how is it in my courtroom with my judge? What are my pathways for intervention from the court?
Yes, and next week, join us at 7 p.m. again here. Like or follow or bookmark us so that you can get the notifications that you need so that you don't miss anything, because what we're talking about might catch you right when you need it.
And leave your own comments below. Wherever you're listening, remember, you're not alone. Until next week, stay strong, stay informed, and keep fighting for what matters most. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.